Hello, Orla. Sorry I'm a bit late. Hot
Hi,
footing
no,
over from another meeting.
no worries. Thank you. I appreciate you finding the time today.
No
Uh,
worries. If we have
thank you.
anything left of our brains at
Yeah.
Friday end of the week, how are you feeling? You feeling better?
Yeah, mostly I've just been very croaky. Yeah, I was losing my voice quite a lot earlier in the week, so yeah, it's more just that um I kind of have to resort to a bit of sign language and and
Yeah.
so on
Mhm.
meetings, but it's much better today.
Oh, that's good. We've got the
Yeah,
weekend
thank
as well
you.
now.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm going to have to brain. We've got a load of other big projects on at the moment, so I'm going to do a mental gear shift, but I haven't had a chance to do any thinking or prep. So
No worries. I mean, I owe you the deck, which I'll go through now, and then I'll
okay.
send it over afterwards so we can go through it and just get your kind of initial thoughts on it. So Tuesday, I'm doing two sessions. One is the first repeat of the first
Yeah.
session, and Yvonne has given me a few bits of feedback on that, just a couple of other things to incorporate. So I'll make sure I get those added, and then the second session is 104, so it's the fourth session, and it's really all about reporting and storytelling. One sort of steer that I will need from you in this, and obviously I know Yvonne will be back on Tuesday and we'll be at the
When you say
session. So,
repeat, do you mean this is cohort two?
so
Um,
I'm doing two sessions for cohort one. I'm
two
doing
sessions of cohort
the
one.
fourth session, which is all
Yeah,
about reporting and storytelling. For cohort two, then we're beginning their training, so it's the first session for cohort two, also on Tuesday.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me. So one thing, and I mean, this is something that I can pick up with Yvonne on Tuesday, but I imagine that there will be potentially some questions around who is supposed to do this reporting. So what I'm going to really present is things to think about when it comes to putting together any kinds of reports, being mindful of your audience. What's the point of the report? What is it you're trying to actually demonstrate? Um, Different kinds of styles just to get people kind of thinking about what they think might resonate with their audiences and stakeholders. A few kind of things around, data hygiene and chart hygiene and so on. But obviously, I'm aware that, because you have the planning and insights team, it's probably not going to be the case that we're expecting everyone to put together all of their own reports and write all of their own analyses. So I'm
I
not
don't know
sure.
about that actually. They might. So
Okay.
I think probably I don't have an overview of all the like reporting things that happen
Mhm.
across the department, but at the moment there's quite a so we have like finance trackers. We've just set up Monday, but we're just in the process of moving over to Monday. We have these slides that we regularly update that say, here are the projects, three things that happened
Mhm.
this month, three things that happened last month. So they're very, unless there's something else that I missed, because I'm not involved in the comms teamwork. So no
Yeah.
doubt that there are probably reports for here's how many visitors we had to the website this week. So there's probably some more datary things, but it feels like our regular reporting is very like project oriented about progress. And I
Yeah,
don't know
it's
if there's like a departmental infrastructure for if we're thinking more about what effect are we having other
mhm.
than your channel visitor metrics. So I think there probably will be a sense of, well, who does do this reporting and who does it go to,
Yeah.
for
So
sure.
so I'm just kind of coming from the perspective of I'm not trying to teach everyone to become a data analyst. I'm just sort
Yeah,
of trying to give them some of a flavor of the things to be mindful of and how to help them when they are producing their own reports.
yeah,
Yeah, I want to kind of set the tone like that from the beginning to make sure
yeah,
that people aren't kind of nervous that because of some of the things I'm going to talk about, it
yeah,
means they're going to suddenly their entire day job is going to become reporting, for
yeah,
instance. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I
that's
think
the
that's
kind
fair.
of That's the kind of context that I'll come at it from.
Yeah.
So just in terms
And
of
then
what I've
maybe it's like
got.
acknowledging within that we don't have this, that there may need to be new structures, but things
Yeah,
that CALT will need
exactly.
to figure out about, like, what do we want reporting on. And I think Yvonne and I would probably say that it would be good to see CALT shift to like an impact management approach. And then what does it mean for your reporting? What are you reporting, when, frequency, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I do think it's helpful for people to understand what an impactful report looks like,
Yeah.
regardless of whether they're the ones who actually have to pull it out, or even if it comes to them commissioning reports and so on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll have the agenda, a bit of a reminder on the coaching. I've booked in, I think actually Vicky emailed separately with Yvonne, copied in, but not yourself. So I've got a call in with her for next week as well, by the way, on the coaching side. Just a quick reminder of what we talked about last time, and then into this session. So we'll be talking about the purposes of reporting. Primarily, it's to demonstrate your impact. It's to understand progress on what you're doing now, what's working, what isn't, and then it's to feed into your future learning and planning. There's obviously different audiences. I've kept these kind of quite broad. So in terms of the board, they're obviously going to be looking for that really big picture, a very top line impact. They're going to want to have a sense of how that is informing your decision making. We did this, it worked well, we're going to do more of it. We did this, it didn't do quite what we expected, so we're going to pivot to this. They're going to want it to be quite succinct, quite top line. For the leadership within the department, they'll
So on
want the
the
same.
board, I think that's ELT rather than board.
Right, okay. Let me just
Um,
make
Now, see,
these.
there is a line from ELT to board, so there's a link from them out to board, but the sorts of bullets that you've got under that are more ELT related.
Okay.
And then that context will make sense because people will probably think of leadership as corporate affairs leadership then.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. So yeah, they're obviously going to want the same kind of information for corporate affairs, but probably with a little bit more detail and a little bit more understanding on the progress tracking. So if you've got something that's in play, they're going to want to understand a bit more about how that's actually progressing, what you're seeing that's working, what you're seeing that's not working, and therefore the decisions that you're making as a result. That was obviously a really big focus of kind of Mark's interest in this, is to make sure that people are making good decisions based on data rather than just doing things because they always have. So being able to demonstrate that you're pivoting or continuing or doing something entirely different because of the data informed decisions. And then the teams themselves, so the actual individuals and the users, they're going to want to measure in a bit more detail. So they'll want to be able to see the short, medium, and long-term impacts. They're going to want to see what that progress tracking looks like, be able to see where they can course correct if they need to, and of course then feed into that decision making as well. So basically you just kind of add more levels of detail as you go, but you still make sure that everything is succinct and answering the questions that you want it to. Quite a lot of this session is going to be based on examples. So I've basically just got lots of different examples. I've tried to pull as many different ones as I can. You'll see though that there is a bit of a theme in terms of what some of them look like. I think what we find in our team is that individuals kind of have a style that they're used to. So I've probably got quite a few that look a bit similar. So this is an example of an executive summary, something that might go to senior leadership, the ELT, and so on. This is obviously a bit more aimed at kind of comms and media,
Yeah, I was just
as will a
thinking
lot
that.
of the examples be, but hopefully it's more about the structure of them and people being able to understand how, they might start to make any sense out of all of the data. So this is based on a similar structure to the framework that this particular client had around awareness, reputation, and engagement, for instance. We've pulled out the different metrics that speak to that. We've got some of the key takeaways here where we're explaining what the results were, we're explaining the context of whether it's gone up or down, and we're explaining whether or not then it's doing what we want it to, which for this particular first one is reaching the right audiences. And so on. Some other examples might be a little bit more top line than that. So, you've got some data here talking about awareness to key audiences and then how something was received and just summarizing some of the key findings. We've got another example that really looks at it in terms of reputational impact, so looking at it in terms of threats and opportunities, and the recommendations that there are then as a result. This is one for much more corporate client, where this is the page that essentially comes out and goes to their senior leadership. So the top story, anything else you should know, and what, oh, just realized I have not properly redacted that one. I'll have to fix that. And what they should be doing more of, essentially, with some of the key statistics that they look at, just to give them a sense of where the direction of travel is, which is very much just focused around how much coverage is there, is it saying the right sorts of things, and how prominent is the organization within that. And this is another type of dashboard kind of style. So it's an OKR dashboard that this organization had put together. They basically had 3 key pillars in terms of what they were trying to achieve at a strategic level. So they had recently rebranded. So it was about going from brand launch to recognition, leading the share in a particular topic, and then being seen as the leader in that particular topic. And so we've got a range of metrics that speak to that, with some of the insights below. So that's just a few examples of, different ways in which you can summarize things in a strategic way. So it might be along your strategic pillars. It might be just in terms of that kind of Q&A of, okay, what's going on? What do you need to be aware of? What can you take away from this? Like, what should you do more of? And so on. So then figure we'll have a bit of a discussion about those
Okay.
to
Can I
get
say
a
something?
sense.
Just on the examples,
Mm-hmm.
those all sound like great examples, but I'm a bit worried that the community engagement team will feel like this is not for them, because I know they've already fed back on that already. So I think it would be good if, after example 1 or 2, there's one much more oriented to the work that that team do, because even if we're saying, look, you can take some of the same principles and apply them, if we're not really reflecting
Yeah.
their work and what we use, after a while people feel like it's not really for them. So I think it would be great to have a more something that reflects the type of activity that happens in that team.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
otherwise, great that
No
we've got a
worries.
mixture of comms, campaign and brand. I think that's helpful for the other teams.
Yeah, I think, community engagement isn't the sort of thing that we typically have a lot of examples in. So I'll see what I'm able to find, or what I can even just kind of mock up that,
Yeah.
speaks a little bit more to them. Yeah, that's noted. So I figure we'll get a kind of discussion going around, what do people think will resonate if they're giving stuff back to the board? What kind of style do they think would be needed? What kind of information do they think would land well? Would it be more narrative driven? Would it be more data driven, etc.? And then just to get people thinking about the different kind of looks and feels of reports. So got a few different examples here from various reports that we've done. So this is from our vaccines report, where we're using quite simple layouts, where you've got a couple of charts and then we've got a couple of paragraphs, but we're also pulling out things in the paragraphs to try and make it not quite so text heavy, so that it is that little bit easier to interpret, so that you're not getting kind of death by PowerPoint or just walls of text.
Yeah.
Other
For this one,
examples.
this might be aimed more at leadership. You had your 3
Mm-hmm.
different levels. So I'm just thinking, I'm sure Yvonne's talked to you about the organizational dashboard that we've got, so
Yeah,
where we have, like, I don't know, we've probably got like 2 data points in there or something at the moment.
yeah.
It's whether that will change over time, but it feels like
Mm-hmm.
they've been very, like, at the moment they're quite reductive over, like, they've got the dashboard, you've got your 2 data points, and I don't know if typically we send them any other types of reporting
Yeah.
things, or whether that needs thinking about. But when I look at all of that, you can see that could be incredibly useful for corporate affairs leadership, and then over time
Mm-hmm.
we could think about how some of that goes to ELT, not the board, ELT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is just a kind of sort of a bit of a mix and match, really, between something a little bit infographic-y with the data on the right.
Yeah.
And then again, we've got this kind of question and answer type approach where it's, how's the organization performed against OKRs? What drove some of the results? What can they learn from what competitors are doing in this particular instance? Another example is, this is one that is quite kind of sleek, very much matches the organization's branding. But again, it's, a minimal amount of data, just kind of the really core things they want to focus on for an executive summary. We've got key stories, what worked well, where are there opportunities and risks. And that's the kind of style that they have throughout the report. So we try and keep things really short and snappy. They've got the data that they need, and we have, summaries that are quite brief and to the point. Another slightly more dashboard style that can work well for some organizations. So when you've got those kind of key metrics, these are obviously all media related, but to be honest, the metrics could be anything. We can kind of ignore them. It's more about the layout. So you have kind of your core data points here, and this could, for instance, be broken out by your different strategic programs rather than by region. And again, you've got some narratives below just to try and explain it. This one is very much based around the objectives of this particular team that we work with. So you can see the different pillars. That's very much their objectives that ladder up into a corporate and board level approach. So we've got the metrics that speak to each of them. And again, it's just very much structured in a way that speaks to the business and to the way that the business wants to see things. And of course, there's much more kind of visual type examples as well, where that might resonate better with people. So if, for instance, you were doing something for an external partner, maybe that might apply more to the collection. If they're kind of working with arts partners and things like that, having that kind of more visual impact can just really help to make sure that you're speaking the same language. So this is something that was for L'Oreal Garnier. It was a campaign report we did for them on sustainability around a campaign that they did. So, consumer brand, we kept it super, super visual to try and keep them engaged. Then I've got a few kind of examples around chart hygiene, just some kind of fun examples of really terrible charting, just to get everyone kind of thinking about, making sure that you are being careful about the way that you present your data. So, the axes there aren't any, and these data points make 0 sense. You've got something here, the pie chart that adds up to more than 100%. We've got here something that looks quite nice and infographic-y, but it actually is very misleading because it makes China look bigger than the private bodies. Again, this one is just trying to overlay more data sets than there actually are, so it doesn't really make any sense. And trying to do something a bit different looking just for the sake of it. They've actually got quite a few data points here that are exactly the same. So they've kind of used this tree map type chart just to be a bit different looking, but it's actually quite difficult to read. And an example of something that, again, looks like you're sort of coming up with something that looks quite snazzy, but when you actually look at it, it's really difficult to understand. And then we've got the kind of preferable version of it. So, sometimes trying to be innovative and trying to be interesting with your charts can be a dangerous thing to do. You want to actually make sure they're very easy to read. So just a few examples around there, and we can have a discussion around, how comfortable people are with the presentation of data and charts and so on, just to get a feel for, how comfortable people are with that. Need to get a higher resolution on this, but
and
just
again,
a
as you
few.
were saying earlier, some of them, a whole load of them, might still feel unclear about whether they'd be doing it. So I think if it can be framed in, these are like brilliant skills to have in your back pocket, when over time how you approach reporting becomes really clear.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of plan to talk about the fact that, like, I myself, I'm not a statistician, I'm not a mathematician, I don't have any kind of background like that. So I know it can often, when you come from a slightly more creative and kind of humanities driven background, it can be a bit overwhelming trying to think of these sorts of things, but that's what we're trying to give people, some of the tools so that they can feel a bit more comfortable if and when they do need to do this. And this is just a kind of a bit of an overview of different types of charts that you can use for different sorts of things. So for instance, making sure that if you're using line charts and area charts, it is showing an over time trend and so on. Then a little bit around narrative framing. So just about how you can actually put a report together to, again, maximize its impact. So here, for instance, we use this kind of headline to actually say something. We're not using it to say this slide is looking at this data point. We're using it to actually tell the story. And to make sure that things are coming through. So here we've got a bit of both. You've got the headline telling you kind of what the data is, but then we've got this lead in basically that is going to grab the attention more. Same here, so that even if people are only reading the kind of the bigger bit in bold, they're still getting a bit of a flavor for it. This is something that we do quite a lot in our reports. So again, the headline for this slide, it's actually telling us what the data point is. It's telling us kind of what's the main takeaway from this slide rather than, giving the title of the slide.
I think these ones would be really helpful because we've just had all of our influence goals released.
Okay.
So I think people are going to be thinking very much, and they're early stage, so they're going to be going through all that big picture work of what are we trying to do, what are the goals, who are the people. So I think they'll be able to relate to this. And I think you can probably frame the community engagement team like this. You can, different work, different content, but they will probably have a lot of narrative based reporting. So
yeah, exactly.
You can loop them in there.
Yeah, like I will try and position all of this as like the data itself that is on these slides is almost irrelevant. What we're really looking at is the layout, is the way in which you tell the story. It doesn't matter if this is about media or if it would be about GDP or, what kind of data points it is. And then just reminding people about the kind of so what, now what are just really helpful questions for them to ask themselves when it comes to what are they actually trying to see within the data. And this kind of also aligns against MEL as well, obviously. So measurement is kind of the what, the analysis part or the evaluation is the so what, and then the now what is the learning. So just trying to constantly bring that element back about the learning side. And also just a couple of other examples of layouts. So Q&A style is one that is often quite helpful. So if you've got specific questions that you want to answer with the report or specific questions that the person you're giving the report to has, literally lay them out like that. It can be really, really helpful so that we're literally answering a question. You're not having to kind of fight through it to be able to find out what the results are. SWOT analyses as well can often be a really helpful way of understanding what's going on, and does also fit quite nicely into that kind of MEL side of things because it's kind of what happened, what's the judgment that we're placing on that, why does it matter, and then what can we do for the future. So thinking about the opportunities and threats that there are. So just a few different approaches to how you can actually put insights and so on together to hopefully help them just start to think a little bit differently about it. A few points on data hygiene, which I'll kind of tidy up and make a bit more visual. But just you want to collect the data, you want to make sure you do some level of cleaning and validating it. So just making sure that, you're sense checking for anomalies, you're sense checking against previous time periods, if that's appropriate, just to see if something looks weird, if something just doesn't pass the smell test, really, it just doesn't seem like it's quite right. And then when it comes to analyzing it, making sure that you're looking at the data in different ways. So volumes, proportions, and averages. Identifying relational data sets. So what I mean by that is simply seeing what data sets you think might belong together. And a framework is a really useful way of allowing you to do that because it will often have grouped different data sets together. So you can see, for instance, your web data against media data that had a URL to the website in it and so on, so that you can see the relationship between different things. Looking at the outliers, comparing to previous time periods, obviously, to understand what good looks like, not forgetting the real world context, particularly important for things like media where, you might have a massive issue going on in the world that is going to drastically change the kinds of coverage you can get. There could also be things like more technical and logistical changes. So if changes have been made to a platform in how it collects data or how users use it, that could also be having an impact on the results that you can see. Identifying and grouping your findings together. So that's typically how I tend to approach insights, is I might have a whole bunch of different points and then I basically go and see where I can group them together. So using post-its or using whatever kind of tools you want, that can often help you to figure out what your story actually is, so that you're not just putting lots of disparate pieces of data together. And be clear about the questions that you want to answer. Whilst you do want to make sure that you're looking at the data from an objective point of view, what is it you're actually trying to understand from it? And make sure that that is informing the way you put a report together. So that's basically everything that I have got so far. I'm going to beef this up a little bit with a few more different examples, see where I can dig out some things that are a little bit more relevant to community engagement as well, to make it more relevant to the different groups. But yeah, I feel like this one is a bit different to the other sessions in that it's probably stuff that they're not necessarily going to have to always do 100% themselves all of the time. It's trying to get them more comfortable with the ideas of, up until now, we've talked about making sure you understand what you're trying to achieve, making sure you're clear on your audiences and what their audience journey and the pathway to change looks like, how you can then pick the right kinds of metrics for that, put them into a framework and so on. And now we're thinking about how you actually work with all of that data, and how they can interpret it and interrogate it to be able to help themselves to understand what's working, what's not working, and how they can communicate that upwards, I should say, rather, to the rest of the organization.
Yeah, I think it's not just upwards as well, because I think when Yvonne was doing the impact framework, we were seeing actually there's teams, because there's a department of 100 people. There'll be teams that have like really useful data that could be useful in another way for someone else. So I think once you start doing this sort of thing, you can see the opportunities like across team where there might be that really useful data sharing that you can do. And plus, I think that will feel nice to people that everything isn't always about like serving leadership.
That's true. So a way that we often put it is talking about socializing your work and socializing the results of your work. So it's not just about reporting upwards. You're absolutely right, but it is about sharing it across the wider department. It could be about sharing it even with other departments that you work with in different ways. Yeah.
And on this data analysis slide, one of the things I was thinking is that these are that we could frame so people aren't thinking, oh, well, it won't be me who's doing analysis and reporting the team, so this is less relevant. I actually think we can frame this as that these are also really helpful skills. If you're doing a bit of research online, let's say we've got these influence goals and they're just looking at data and things online and thinking about, right, who are we influencing where? I've no idea to what extent people do go and sort of do research themselves and look at things, that this gives them a really useful set of skills for weighing up data that's in front of them as well. So just to keep them hooked in case people sort of think, oh, I won't be doing reporting, it's less for me. Actually, it's really helpful data literacy skills.
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually a podcast that I'll reference as well, that I listened to a couple of weeks ago. It's called Data Malarkey, and they had a guy on, David Spiegelhalter. He was on TV and in the media quite a lot throughout the pandemic. Basically, he is a kind of he's a professor of something. I can't remember exactly what it is, but he's very interested in data literacy and how data gets communicated. So he was doing a lot to try and explain what different data points throughout the pandemic meant to people. And I think it is interesting that, we went through the pandemic, we were having data sort of presented to us quite a lot, often in misleading ways. And I think that we're probably going to have quite similar things happen over the next few months with all of the different elections that are happening around the world. There's going to be so much polling data and everything. So I'll try and contextualize it as, this is just an increasing skill set that is needed, because there's more and more data in the world, but there's also more and more then opportunity for it to be misinterpreted. So I'll position it in a much bigger sense than that. To make sure that it's not just kind of, oh, there's a planning and insights team, they'll do the analysis, I don't need to worry about it.
And we won't, by the way, our team won't do any of that analysis. It will have to be the department. We are much more focused on, there may be, depending on how we will figure out what this, there's just a piece about how does this all join up and ladder together that's kind of linked to the impact framework in some ways. Like what does that reporting infrastructure look like? What do the rhythms look like? And there's a piece of design needed there. And it may well be at some point that we play a role in that, but in general, we won't be doing analysis and reporting, because we actually are much more largely at the moment focused on commissioning insights that drives the goals. So we will understand, okay, what does it take to field build in mental health? We're building a brand health tracker. We're delivering audience segmentation. So yeah, just don't want people to leave thinking we've got that's what we do and we've got capacity to do that. Because we're having these requests can't fulfill, but it will need figuring out. There is definitely like overall what's the reporting, who does it, who combines it. That'd be really useful for the CALT session, I think, actually, to really prompt them into thinking about that.
Obviously some of the options that we had in the contract as well were for us to design report templates and to potentially help deliver some initial reports to sort of see how we can pull everything together. So we'll definitely need to pick up that conversation again, and also the review of the framework and kind of where we're getting to with that. But so that's really the gist of it then for the next session. So it's really just all about how we tell our stories with data. I've got a few other examples I'm working on. It takes quite a while to redact things and so on. So I'll flesh it out with different types of examples as much as I can. And I'll definitely make sure I've got something that is more relevant to community engagement.
I don't know if you've ever seen our trust nets, our internal internet.
I'm not sure.
Maybe, I'm sure Yvonne could show it to you. I was trying to figure out, it's a load of confidential things on there. I can't, but even just things like these, like narrative things, it might be that we decide to even use TrustNet more and do some like really quick, snappy narrative. Because at the moment we're sort of thinking about upward reporting or out, but it could be that we really harness things like TrustNet more to tell the story of our work across the organisation. So again, that's the bit where you'll reach other teams, and that's where those narrative skills might be really helpful. It's really good for building the profile of corporate affairs and the team, not as a replacement to the like upward flow of reporting, but as a like really helpful way of talking about our work. So that might be something else that you reference as you're thinking, perhaps especially in the narrative piece, about how it helps us to use our own tools a lot more, like the TrustNet, which is the internal internet. Intranet, rather.
I think that speaks to the point about socialization as well. So that it's not just about box ticking kind of approach to reporting and analysis, that it is about sharing the impact of what you're actually doing and just sharing the work that everyone is up to. Rather than it just being purely I have to give someone my homework kind of thing.
Because I think there are a lot of people that actually don't really fully understand what corporate affairs is and does in the organisation. Because you've got a lot of people who come from a science background. In research programs team is huge, and even when they know, they don't quite know what the team does. So I think the more that we can sell that, of course, there's going to be these sort of upward flows, but you can start to think about how you really create greater understanding of your work across the organisation by using your own tools more. And that would be good. That all sounds great.
Okay, I'll build that in for sure, to make sure that we're talking about that as kind of a secondary purpose of reporting and analysis and so on as well, actually. So just making a note on that. Okay, well, great. I'll make those extra few tweaks then to the deck, and I'll get it over to you and Yvonne. And I think we had the regular Monday call in, but obviously I know Yvonne is still off on Monday. I'm assuming we won't need to have that unless you wanted to have another catch up once you've seen the final deck.
More your shout, really, but I think the changes are really clear. They're just
Yep.
more community engagement related ones. A couple of like
definitely.
narrative things, and then just to watch out on the executive leadership team rather than board. Not
Yes.
obviously stuff is reported to board upwards,
Mhm.
but it will be ELT that we're thinking about, and the strong demand from board as well. Julia
Mhm.
Gillard, as head of the board,
Yeah.
is really keen that we, as an organisation, improve our impact reporting skills, including corporate
Mhm.
affairs. So definitely relevant to board, but it's just so it doesn't confuse people. Like,
Yeah. No, that's absolutely a good point. Good for me to be aware of. Yeah, so I'll send the changes through, and then yeah, if there is anything that you want to jump on a quick call about on Monday, by all means, just let me know. But yeah, otherwise then I'll pick up with Yvonne on Tuesday.
that sounds good. Who is the Fireflies AI that's joined us? That taking
Oh, it's a
lots of notes and
note-taking, yeah, it's a note-taking bot sort of app thing.
yeah. Is it literally a transcript, or sounds like there's an
Um,
AI element to it which it analyzes? What does
yeah,
it do and where does
it
it go?
summarizes. So yeah, I think it basically kind of records the audio, I guess, turns it into a transcript and then provides summaries of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's connected to Richard's account, because he
Yes,
was,
there's Richard there.
yeah, he was in these meetings, so I'll have to find out from him exactly what it looks like. Um, but yeah, lots of those different things about these days that can just kind of help make it a bit easier to keep notes and so on.
Yeah.
I still like scribbling stuff down on a bit of paper.
Yeah, me too. But although I have a remarkable, I don't know if you've seen, those are like
Oh
digital
yeah.
notebooks, and that's been life-changing for me.
I've increasingly seen more people with them. I've been at a couple of conferences the past couple of weeks, and there were quite a lot of
Yeah,
people using them there.
really, yeah, so
Yeah.
good. Because it's literally, we're someone who sits above a team. There's, I don't know, we've probably got 20 projects on the go. It means
Mm,
I have a notebook within this for every person, but also for every project. And then I can just pick
yeah.
up where I left off. There's no notes in an old notebook that I don't have anymore.
Yeah, exactly. You get the benefit of that, but then you get the more
Yeah.
kind of tactile experience of actually writing, because that's
Yes.
what I like sometimes. Like I do often take quite a lot of notes on my laptop.
Yeah.
I use OneNote and have it all kind of very well categorized, but sometimes I do like the physical act of writing. It makes
Yeah.
something stick in my head
Yeah,
a
it
little bit
does.
more.
It's this, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
the same thing where I need that kind of kinesthetic link. I'd say
yeah,
where it's weaker is then you'd have to go through, that's why I was interested in this. You'd have to go through your notebook to fish out your actions. So I literally
right.
bought a new little notebook where I could write, where if I've committed to an action, I can.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's the only
Hmm.
downside to
Interesting.
it, where the
Yeah.
AI interested me. So I thought, oh, maybe you can pull out all your actions you've committed to from those.
Yeah.
Uh, if you can hear my dog barking very vigorously, but
No.
no, you can't. Okay. Oh, this software is so good now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
No
for
worries. Thank
that.
you.
I'm in cohort 2, so I'm looking forward
Okay.
to.
So you'll be in the session on Tuesday morning.
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
So
I'll
I
see you
will also
then.
see you there.
Yep.
Have a lovely weekend. Hope
You too.
you feel better.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm getting there.
I'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks very much.
Bye,
See you
Orla.
then.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.